There is no good way of doing it. One of the easiest ways, believe it or not, is to come down to the Ohio River and go up to Pittsburgh, down to Morgantown or Brownsville, and then go over the mountains that way. But it's very difficult. And if you want to tie the country together, you need some transportation. So we authorized, the bill is authorized in 1806. It takes about 5 years to get it started. And it takes another 7 years to get it built. Now, it's a real road. There are specifications in terms of how wide it is, what kind of materials it can be made from, and it comes to Wheeling. Now, why does it come to Wheeling? Well, have you ever paid attention to the National Road?
Yeah.
Okay. You come out of Cumberland and you start to go west. And then when you get into western Maryland, it starts to go north. And it goes up to Uniontown. Now, why does it go to Uniontown? Well, Uniontown was the home of a guy by the name of Albert Gallatin. Albert Gallatin was the Secretary of the Treasury. So it goes to his house. Okay? And then it has to go to Washington. I don't know if you've ever realized this, but those of you now who have a compass in your car, when you leave Wheeling and go to Washington and you look at your compass, you're going north. Okay? Because there were people there, and we went the road to come to there. And then we come down to Wheeling. Remember, if you're in Washington, why not just take it to Wellsburg? Well, because you've got more influence here. Now, once that road comes to Wheeling, and it intersects with the Ohio River, you have got an advantage that nobody else has in this part of the United States. And the way that I used to try to get my students to imagine it is imagine a funnel, okay? And that narrow part gets you into Wheeling, and then it opens up everything to the west. Wheeling, by the middle part, well, let's say about the 1870s, will have more people just in Wheeling than in the rest of Ohio County, Brooke County, Hancock County, and Marshall County combined. Because this is where the action is. You want to cross, you'll be able to cross the river here. You'll be able to cross part of the river as early as the 1830s with what's called the Back Channel Bridge. Okay? That one was easier to build because in the summer times, there'd be no water there. Okay? And then, you know, you can have a system of ferries, or given this past, if there were no dams on the Ohio River this past summer, you would have been able to walk across the Ohio River at Wheeling. In 1819, all traffic on the Ohio stopped because the water was only that deep. Remember, the Ohio River that you see is not the river of the early 19th century. That river is maintained artificially by a series of locks and dams. We're in the pool created by the dam at New Martinsville. Backs it up. Okay? And that's so that you can accommodate large barges that draw at least 9 feet of water. But in the 19th century, we created a new boat called the steamboat. And if you've ever seen pictures of steamboat, instead of sitting in the water, it sat on it. It displaced it. So that a steamboat on western rivers could run on that much water. Okay? And remember, the steamboat is developed as early as 1807, so it's moving north and south. By 1811, we're already going from Pittsburgh to New Orleans in steamboats. Now, the benefit that the United States has had is its interior is drained by this huge river complex. You know, the Mississippi system, the Ohio, the Tennessee, the Kentucky, the Monongahela, the Muskingum, the Illinois River, the Wabash River, the Missouri River, and so on. That's a very important thing. Remember, the first World War, not World War I, but the first World War, which was the French and Indian War, which began in 1754, was fought over who possessed that river. That's what George Washington was doing when, you know, he's up at Fort Necessity and doing all these other things. And the British secure that. And that's the advantage that we have, is that you can have river transport. So we use rafts. We can send a raft down the river. Did you ever try bringing a raft back up? In the beginning of the 19th century, there were probably 100 rafts a month that would float by Wheeling, going to all different kinds of places. Well, there's a new technology. We put a keel boat. A keel boat, you know, has a nice little keel on it. You can take it upriver, except you got to push it. And if you've ever seen it done, it's done with poles, and you put the poles down at the bottom of it, and you walk it. And if you're my age, you remember Mike Fink on Walt Disney, you know, and Davy Crockett and the whole bit, Daniel Boone, that whole thing. My wife will tell you that I was always a big Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett fan. When we were dating, I couldn't call her on Thursday nights because at 8 o'clock Daniel Boone was on. You know, I gave her a hint. Look, you know, that's. But it's a good answer, but it's tough. And then this guy invents a. You know, the steam engine was not new to the beginning of the 19th century. James Watt had developed the steam engine back almost 50 years before. It's just the application of it. Now, we could turn that wheel hits the water and pushes the boat forward. Hey, this is a nice thing. Because it's a lot easier. Okay? So we start going up and down the river. Well, one of the problems with that is how do you generate the steam? You have to have a fuel. What do we use for fuel? Trees. And after a while, guess what? There weren't many trees. So we had to find another one, and that's where we developed coal. You know, you'll see at the last meeting, we'll show you some pictures of the area, and as late as the beginning of the 20th century, there are no trees in Wheeling at all. None. We've cut them all down. Okay? We've either cut them down for pastures and farmland, or cut them down because we use them as fuel. So you have the steamboats, and they're going up and down, and then 6-7 years later, here comes the National Road. And we're going to tie east to west. When I was a graduate student at the University of Hawaii, I was doing some research on some missionaries, and one of these guys was a fellow by the name of William Richards, and he was from upstate New York. And after he had been in Hawaii for a couple years, he came back. Takes you months to get back from Hawaii at that time. Revisits his family, and then he's going to go back to Hawaii, and he knows that this will be the last time he visits. But what struck me, sitting there in the archives in Honolulu, was how he got back to Hawaii. He came down out of western New York, and he came through Wheeling, Virginia, picked up a steamboat, and took it down the river, down to New Orleans, picked up a sailing craft, took that sailing craft to Panama, walked across the Isthmus of Panama, picked up another boat or ship, and sailed into Honolulu. Okay? See, if you go places today, and somebody said, "Where are you from?" and you say, "Well, I'm from Wheeling." Where's that? Right? That's in West Virginia. Where's that? Okay. Well, not in the 19th century. Wheeling would have been one of the best known places in the United States, because anybody traveling east-west would likely come through Wheeling.